Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at Legacy Collectibles taking a look at a Red 9. This is an iconic version of the C96 Broomhandle Mauser pistol, and these were guns that were actually ordered for wartime use during the First World War. This pistol was not, contrary to some assumption, not actually adopted by the German military prior to World War I. It was German in origin. It was the first really commercially practical and successful self-loading pistol, but the German military didn't adopt it. They ended up adopting the Luger in 1908 instead. So by 1915, the German army was having a significant handgun shortage, and as we can see from looking at what else they adopted, they kind of went out there and said, we'll take whatever you got. They preferred 9mm Parabellum. It was the standard sidearm cartridge that was used in the Luger, and it was a good, potent cartridge. But during World War I, they accepted a whole bunch of 32 ACP, or 7.65 Browning caliber pistols as well. Those would do the job. They were a weaker cartridge, but that meant that they could be made in simple blowback pistols, and that was easier and cheaper, and there were a lot of small-scale manufacturers that were able to supply those. But, of course, if you're looking for pistols in World War I Germany and you're trying to figure out what can we get made, the C96 Mauser is an obvious option. The German government contracted for 150,000 of these pistols chambered for 9mm Parabellum, which wasn't really a normal thing. Mauser made these guns in 7.63 Mauser caliber, 7.63 by 25mm. So in order to fulfill the government contract, they it only took minor changes to adapt these guns to 9 Parabellum, and per German government requirements, they carved this really big numeral 9, which was then painted red, the paint's kind of faded out of this one, into the guns. And this is because existing 7.63 caliber C96 pistols that were already floating around had been brought into service as substitute standard guns. Well, now you're bringing in 9mm versions of the same thing, and this is a gun that anyone who was experienced with handguns would say, it's a C96 Mauser, it's in 7.63mm. Well, we don't want to interchange the two, we don't want to mix them up. Keep it very clear what gun is what. So the 9mm ones get big red 9s engraved into the grips. Now, there is one little marking that will be found on most of these, and they've got their own serial number range. So let's take a minute and take a closer look at exactly what we've got here. So as you saw the pistol a moment ago, it was snapped into its shoulder stock, which is certainly something that you could do if you wanted to make a nice precision shot. However, probably far more common for it to be left in this configuration. When these were purchased by the German government, you got a whole rig, or rather the Germans got a whole rig. You got the pistol, the combination holster/stock, so we can unsnap this. There is a button right here that allows us to open up gently the holster, and then the whole gun fits right there inside, and that is how you would actually carry this. So in conventional use, the holsters would originally have had a little lanyard ring on them, and the Red 9s did not. Instead, they had this piece of leather work that kind of the holster nested into, and it's got a strap on top to secure the whole thing in there. It's got a pocket here, which is actually for a spare magazine spring and follower, and then a pocket here and here that was for a handled cleaning rod. And then on the back, you've got a pair of belt loops. So this constitutes a complete Red 9 rig, and they were all purchased and issued like this, although today, in the collector's circuit, well, a lot of the leather has been destroyed over time or is missing. The holsters are not always still present. Now, of course, the most iconic element here is the carved 9 on the grip to designate the caliber, and that's a pretty typical shape of that 9. They were done by hand, so there will be a little bit of variation. You can see a little bit of red paint remaining in this one. Beyond that, we have serial numbers in all the normal places. Of course, the frame and lockwork serial numbers are back here. These will run from 1 up to approximately 135,000. these Red 9 guns were in a unique or an independent serial number range unrelated to other C96 productions. So you can't imply dates based on these the way that you can with other Mauser pistols. Now I have a second example here that I want to show you because some, but not all of the Red 9s will have a Prussian Eagle proof mark on the front of the magazine. This guy doesn't, but this example does, and both are correct. The sights used on these pistols are 500-meter sights, so different variations of the C96 will have either 500 or 1,000-meter sights. The Red 9s are all 500s with this style of markings. We, of course, have a standard German proof mark up on the barrel, along with the serial number again, and the Waffenfabrik Mauser Oberndorf AN for Am Neckar, the Neckar River. Got the Mauser marking up there. And these have the long 140 millimeter or just shy of 6-inch barrels. So these are not short-barreled bolo types. They are longer barreled. 140 was a standard Mauser barrel length, standard in particular for military guns. The holsters will also be serialized to the guns based on the last 3 digits on the top of the holster metalwork. Total production of the 9mm C96 was approximately 139 or 140,000, and that's what you will find serial numbers going up to. However, there has been a major misconception in the collecting community that all of this production took place before or right up until the end of World War I. In fact, production of the Red 9 ran into the early 1920s. The actual production by the end of the war was at most 95,000. So serial numbers would continue. The dates are a little bit hazy because in some cases Mauser was recording production by fiscal years that run from August through September instead of January through December. If I am able to find a more specific number that were actually produced by November 11th, 1918, I will put it up in the description text under the video. So if you're watching this, check there, and if I have an update, I'll include it. However, the salient point is the first deliveries of the Red 9s to the German military were made on January 5th, 1918. It took 5 or 6 months from when the order was placed in July of 1917 to actually get the guns both produced and then shipped and distributed to German arms depots where they could be given to troops. So the actual deployment of the Red 9 was only in 1918 at the very end of the war. And as I said, we have a total of at most about 95,000. So production continued after the war. The same serial number range continued unchanged up to approximately 140,000. That was circa 1922 or 1924 that production finally ended. So if you would like to see some of the nitty-gritty detail on production dates, there are 2 books to check out. One is Paul Mauser by Mauro Baudino, and the other is the Mauser Archives by John Speed. In this case, they're both based on the same raw Mauser archive data, but the 2 books cover a distinctive different sets of information. So I apologize for breaking into and revising the video here. This information came to my attention only right after the video posted. So if you would like to see me get scooped more often, check out Milsurp World on YouTube. That's where Mauro did his interview where he pointed out these issues, which we're now including in this video. Anyway, I will return to my originally filmed self. Now, that big Red 9 in the grips is obviously really distinctive, and that became kind of a focal point for collectors and folks who were interested in, the firearms of World War I. So it's a well-known name, and it's something that everybody recognizes. Hopefully, now you know a little bit more about what they really were and how to identify one, as opposed to any other random C96 that has just had Red 9 grips stuck onto it, because that is a thing that happens. So, big thanks to Legacy Collectibles for giving me the opportunity to take a look at their Red 9 rig here. This is a thoroughly legitimate one, perhaps a little bit worse for wear, but frankly, that's kind of the condition I prefer them in, rather than something that's so new that it looks like it's right out of the factory. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more stuff along these lines, definitely make sure to check out Legacy Collectibles YouTube channel. They have a lot more content like this. You can check them out. I have a link to their YouTube channel in the description below. Thanks for watching.